Welcome back to Trusted Transitions. In our next segment, I have Michelle Fitzgerald, owner of Horizons Law Group, in the virtual remote studio with me today. Hi, Michelle. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing pretty well, pretty well. For the benefit of listeners, Horizons Law Group offers a broad range of legal services, including divorce and legal separation, estate planning, debt and creditor issues, family law, and probate. Michelle, as you know, on this program, we talk a lot about the home transition process. Today, however, though, we're going to talk about another transition that many of us have to face later in life, and that is divorce. Fortunately, though, there are some great options available today to make the divorce process much easier to navigate. It'd be great if you could share with us today the options that you guys offer at Horizons and an overview on each of those options.
Sure. No problem. One of the main options that has become very popular, I would say, in the last 3 to 5 years is mediation. That is where the parties together work with one attorney and have they work through all the difficult issues, assets, support, everything, debts with that attorney and go through charts and have discussions what each person's viewpoint is and each person's request. And then each party, is filling out financials, et cetera. But with the mediation, it's typically 3, 4, 5 meetings, a couple hours each meeting. And it's essentially a settlement process where you have those difficult discussions with the professional who can help guide you. Uh,
Okay.
and that's one very, very popular option. Of course, there's always the litigation option, which is having the traditional two attorneys. Each person has an attorney. You go to court, and there is motions and hearings and court orders and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
That gets expensive. And at the end of the day, even in that process, the court orders the parties to then sit with a professional mediator, usually a retired judge at that point, to try to mediate and go through all the issues. So this is really picking that resolution process from the start. Saves a lot of time and money in mediation, and the parties a lot of times will split the fee if they've already separated finances. And so it's just a really nice option.
Well, I would imagine too, as I'm thinking about this, older adults, 50 plus, as this program targets, most of our listeners are 50 plus in age, that I would imagine maybe the divorce process is a little less expensive because you're not having to deal with placement of children, which can take a lot of time, right? Going back and forth, and there's typically a lot of maybe not agreement on that when younger couples come in. Is that true?
I would say so, although I do find that sometimes professional couples started having kids later in life after they finish
Okay.
their education. But even with them, they may have one or two children left in high school near the end. So they typically aren't arguing about the placement at that point of the remaining children. So that is true in large part.
So how does mediation and collaborative law differ? What are the big differences between the
So
two?
yeah, collaborative, we haven't mentioned that one yet. That is where it's kind of in between the traditional approach and the mediation.
Okay.
Each party has their own attorney,
Mhm.
separate law firms, and they sign a contract to agree to meet and discuss things instead of going to court and asking for, the court to make orders and
Mhm.
motion. And so it's really kind of puts onus on the parties to hammer things out. But the difference is you each have your own advocate in the room.
Okay.
Whereas with the mediation, parties can choose the mediation option and not have attorneys present. It would just be the two parties and the mediator.
Mhm.
But with that, when I do the mediations, I highly encourage parties to have counsel, whether I also offer it coaching and consulting. And
Mhm.
so when parties are working with a different mediator, let's say, they could come to my office for the coaching and consulting fees. Maybe
Okay.
help crunch numbers in between, review offers that are made, see if it makes sense, talk about their concerns, and helping them to make logical, reasoned decisions, rather than going through something saying, this feels unfair. Well, I don't know. I need someone to tell me if what the mediator is saying is on point, things like that. So
What
the
is
coaching and consulting is another option. A lot of parties can, you can find forms online, and when parties are in I call the gray divorce, or that age range, 60s, 50s and 60s, they know their assets for the most part, and maybe they think they can put together a spreadsheet. And so then it's a matter of, well, how do we file all these forms?
Mhm.
We also have a service for that called limited assistance, or
Okay.
unbundled assistance. And it's a smaller fee, of course, because we are just helping them with the forms, but
Sure.
it saves them the time and hassle from figuring out each form, and what is needed and what parts they can skip, and they can be, you know, um, golfing and spending time with their family and friends instead of, going through forms. So that's
I'm
a
sure
nice
every
option.
divorce is different. Is there an average, though, on the number of months from the time someone files to when a divorce is finalized? What would you say the average
Well, I'll
is?
start with this. The fastest it can be done is 4 months from when it's filed.
Oh, okay.
That's a required waiting period. I think it was designed long ago to prevent parties from being upset from, one dispute and then filing and trying to have something done right away. Gives a cooling off period, if you will, and then, thinking about things. So
Is
that
there a
is
separation that's required first during that 4 month? Does the court require you to separate during that time?
no. Racine County used to do that. They used to have you come in within 4 to 6 weeks and issue temporary orders,
Mhm,
require one party to move out. They wanted parties to sort of live in the reality of what they
mhm,
were asking to happen, and
mhm.
before finalizing things. They no longer require that either. They realize that it sometimes takes time for parties to work through the finances, and sometimes we need a final agreement, and the party might need to be paid their equity, let's say from the home or whatnot, before they could really move to their next residence.
Right, right. So 4 months is the quickest on average. How many months average?
I would say a lot can be, most are probably done in 6 to 12 months, because believe it or not, it's still the case that 98% or more cases do settle. And what that means is, even when parties take positions at first that sound like they're not going to resolve, after
Mhm.
meeting professionals with a mediator and going through the numbers and going through what the legal arguments can be and can't be, ultimately they will come to some compromise and reach a settlement. So
Sure, sure.
yeah, I would say 6 to 12 months.
And then, what is the pro se divorce package? How does that differ? Is that
Yes, that's that limited scope that I mentioned, where it is, assistance with the forms. That one is
okay,
typically 2 meetings, 1 meeting to get everything started, and, then the second meeting to wrap things up.
right,
And the biggest part that parties would have to do in that process is just pull together a lot of the financial information. And
right.
then we handle all the rest of the court forms with that. I would say with the advent of AI, the coaching and consulting, which is sort of the pay as you go kind of thing, where you could come
Mhm.
in and for pay for an hour or two, and have that review and that expert advice and discussion. Uh, that's becoming more popular, coaching and consulting, and the limited scope, that pro se option, just because you can't find some information. However, you still don't know what you don't know. And so it's still really good to have that advice and direction, just to make sure, even if you think you've done all your homework, it would still be good to have that review before signing off or finalizing something.
That's awesome. Well, Michelle, thanks so much for sharing with us today. We're just about out of time for the segment. I would encourage listeners, if you have further questions, to give Michelle a call. Michelle is great. I've known her for several years. She's a great person, and their firm does some great work. So I would highly recommend her. So if you have questions, Michelle, how can listeners reach you?
Yes, 262-432-3600, or our website, horizonslaw.com. Thank you for
Awesome.
having me today.
You're welcome. Have a great day. We'll be back in just a few minutes with the final segment of Trusted Transitions.